doors swung open on another cold weekday morning, and there he was, a black man in a tailored suit, standing still for just a breath too long, drawing sidelong glances from tellers who adjusted their smiles a little too late. He didn't say a word yet, but you could sense the tension tightening the air, that flicker of unease in the manager's eyes as they sized him up, pretending it was about professionalism. But everyone in the room felt the real game being played. It was supposed to be a routine transaction, nothing more than numbers on a screen. But behind those polite nods and forced greetings was a powder keg waiting for a spark. And the real twist? No one in that bright, polished lobby had the faintest clue that they were seconds away from destroying everything they valued most. Stick around, hit like if you're ready for the unraveling, subscribe so you don't miss what happens next, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and how you think this story will end. Malcolm Pierce exhaled slowly as the words hit him with deliberate precision. The polished marble floors seemed to glow coldly in the winter morning light flooding through the massive glass windows. He felt the eyes of other customers flicker toward him, curiosity sharpening into something less kind as they registered the tension at the main counter. He held the handle of his slim leather briefcase in a white-knuckled grip, but forced his voice into measured calm. "Good morning. I'd like to speak with someone about transferring corporate funds between several of our accounts," he said. "It's a significant sum, and I want to ensure the documentation is correct." Trent let out a short, dismissive laugh, one corner of his mouth curling in open mockery. "Between multiple accounts? That's cute. We're not a payday lender here. Let's keep it realistic, okay?" His voice was just loud enough to carry to the people lined up behind Malcolm. A couple of them looked up with polite discomfort, while another smirked outright. Malcolm's spine went rigid, the heat rising from the collar of his crisp white shirt to his temples. He forced a slow breath, determined not to show how badly the word stung. He cleared his throat, willing steel into his tone. "This is legitimate business," he said, voice quieter now but firm. "I have the paperwork right here." He raised the briefcase slightly, beginning to unlatch it. Trent didn't even glance at it. He leaned back, arms folding across his chest as though settling in to enjoy the performance. "I don't need to see any homemade paperwork," he said, dripping condescension. "If you have real business, come back with someone who actually knows how banking works." A harsh laugh broke from the man in line behind Malcolm. He felt a flush of shame crawl up his throat, knowing the other customers were all too aware of what was happening. He tried to hold his ground. "Listen," he said, voice tight. "I'm a client here. I'm asking you to do your job." Trent's eyebrows rose theatrically. "Oh, I'm doing my job," he said, voice icy and mocking at once. "Protecting this institution from fraud, from wasting time on fantasies. This is a professional establishment, and you're embarrassing yourself." The words hit Malcolm like punches. The quiet in the lobby became charged. People pretended to look away, but their ears strained to catch every word. The hush was a verdict in itself. He heard someone cough. Another person muttered under their breath, but no one spoke up. He felt the weight of their judgment. That somehow they'd all decided to believe Trent's insinuations. That he was a fraud. That he didn't belong. He swallowed hard, the shame and rage swirling into something dangerously close to despair. Trent's smile widened into something almost cruel. "Tell you what," he said, tilting his head slightly, voice dropping into faux confidentiality that still carried clearly. "If you're looking to play banker, you might want to try a check-cashing place down the street. They love these little performances." Another ugly laugh broke from behind him. Malcolm's vision went blurry at the edges. He tried to blink it away, heart pounding so hard it hurt. "This is unprofessional," he whispered hoarsely, unable to keep the tremor from his voice now. Trent's voice snapped like a whip. "I'll tell you what's unprofessional. Pretending you belong somewhere you don't." He turned deliberately to the next customer in line. "Can I help you, ma'am?" The woman glanced at Malcolm with a wince, but said nothing. She stepped forward obediently, her eyes dropping to the counter. Malcolm stood frozen, every muscle locked, breath coming in sharp little gasps. The fury was so strong he thought he might black out. He imagined lunging across the counter. He imagined screaming until the whole pristine lobby shook. But he did none of that, because he knew what would happen if he did. Security would haul him out, maybe worse, and Trent would wear that same smug smile all the while. So he didn't speak. He didn't move. He watched as Trent smiled politely at the next customer, voice slick and professional once more. "Sorry about the wait. We had a little misunderstanding." A few people laughed softly at that. Malcolm's fingers twitched on the handle of his briefcase. Trent didn't blink. Instead, he leaned forward over the counter, raising his voice deliberately so the entire lobby could hear. "Sir, I'm not running a charity here. You're wasting everyone's time." His voice rang off the marble walls like a gavel in a courtroom. Conversations around them fell silent. Several people turned outright to watch, their faces expectant, some with open curiosity and others with thinly disguised disdain. Malcolm's jaw tightened. He could feel the weight of every eye in the room pressing on him. He drew a slow breath. "I have the paperwork with me," he said. He opened his briefcase, pulling out a neatly clipped folder of authorization letters, bank statements, and ID copies. He tried to push them gently across the counter. "If you just look," Trent interrupted with a theatrical sigh and snatched up Malcolm's ID between two fingers like it was something sticky. He lifted it under the overhead light with exaggerated scrutiny, flipping it back and forth as if looking for counterfeit watermarks. "This can't be real," he announced, turning slightly so people behind Malcolm could see the ID and hear every word. "Look at this. Looks homemade." A sharp laugh burst from someone in the line. Another customer, an older man in a thick wool coat, muttered, "Jesus," under his breath. But he didn't sound sympathetic. Malcolm's face burned. His fingers flexed against the edge of the counter, and for a second he couldn't speak. The blood roared in his ears, making it hard to focus. His ID was perfectly valid. His documents were in order. But the paper in Trent's fingers might as well have been toilet paper for all the respect he was giving it. Trent turned the ID sideways, squinting at it with an exaggerated, mocking seriousness, before flicking it dismissively back across the counter like trash. "Yeah, okay, sure," he drawled. "Next time get something from the DMV, not a Kinko's." Laughter rippled again. This time it wasn't even stifled. Malcolm's heart twisted in his chest. He heard his own voice crack as he said, "That's a government-issued ID. It's perfectly valid." He sounded desperate even to himself. He hated it. Trent spread his hands innocently, eyes wide with feigned innocence. Sure, buddy. Whatever you say. I just don't want the bank getting burned. You understand, right? Gotta be careful who we do business with." Malcolm felt the words lodge in his throat. The accusation was naked now, spoken with deliberate cruelty, so everyone could hear. That he was a risk. That he was suspect. That he didn't belong. He tried again, voice low and shaking. "I'm a client. I have money in this bank. I need to move funds between accounts." Trent gave a small, pitying laugh, shaking his head as he turned to one of the tellers behind him. "Hey, you hear that? Big-time investor here wants to move money around. Hope the vault's ready for those quarters and dimes." The teller shifted uncomfortably but didn't say anything. Nobody did. The entire lobby was complicit in its silence. The security guard near the entrance watched with mild interest but didn't move, didn't intervene, didn't seem to see anything wrong. Trent turned back to Malcolm, smile gone now, face settling into that same cold mask he'd worn earlier. His voice dropped, but somehow it carried even better. "Look," he said, tone as brittle as glass. "You can stand here all day if you want, but I'm not going to waste my time on some two-bit hustle. Not today." Then, stiffening his shoulders, he turned back to the counter and cleared his throat. Trent was leaning lazily against the marble, chatting quietly with the teller, the picture of smug ease. He didn't even bother to turn when Malcolm approached. Malcolm spoke carefully, choosing each word like it was a grenade that might go off if he got it wrong. "I'd like you to look up the details on my corporate account," he said, voice low and shaking only slightly now. "We need to verify the balances before transferring." Trent didn't bother looking at him. He tilted his head and examined his fingernails as though Malcolm wasn't even there. Finally, without glancing up, he spoke. "Bank policy says I don't have to answer vague questions." Malcolm's chest tightened, frustration coiling into raw panic. He struggled to keep his voice level. "It's not vague. I can give you the account numbers. I have the authorizations here." He held the folder out again, shaking slightly in his grip. Trent exhaled heavily, finally glancing over with weary disdain. "Buddy, I don't know how else to say this. I'm not going to waste my afternoon going on a treasure hunt for imaginary accounts you can't even prove exist." Malcolm blinked, stunned by the baldness of it, his mouth opening and closing silently. He felt his fingers spasm on the folder. They're not imaginary," he managed, his voice cracking with suppressed fury and embarrassment. Trent made a mocking face of regret. Well, see, that's your problem. I don't see them in front of me. You can wave around all the paper you want. That doesn't mean anything to me." He straightened slightly, his tone sharpening like a blade. "Come back when you have someone with you who knows what they're doing. A real banker." Behind Malcolm, someone let out a low whistle of amusement. He felt his ears burn. He turned slightly, catching the gaze of a man in a camel hair coat smirking openly, shaking his head as though this was all a pathetic joke. The humiliation pooled in Malcolm's gut like ice water, but he wouldn't move. He tried again, voice so low it trembled. "I am a client. I have money here. I need to see my balances." Trent let out an exasperated sigh, then deliberately turned away mid-sentence. "Sorry for the delay," he called over Malcolm's shoulder to the next customer in line. "Some people don't know their place." The words hit Malcolm like a punch to the chest. The phrase, so clear, so unmistakable, seemed to ring in the suddenly hushed lobby. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then there was the scrape of shoes on marble as the next customer eagerly stepped forward, avoiding Malcolm's eyes, grateful not to be in his place. Trent smiled at the woman, all professional charm. "How can I help you today?" The woman gave Malcolm a sidelong glance, then leaned forward conspiratorially, as though the entire ugly scene hadn't just happened. Malcolm felt frozen in place, his legs like lead, his face numb. He couldn't seem to catch his breath. The folder in his hand felt absurdly heavy. He watched as Trent processed the woman's transaction without hesitation, his voice pleasant, efficient, as though Malcolm had never existed. It was like being erased in real time. The teller next to Trent shot Malcolm a quick, nervous look, then dropped her gaze immediately. Even the guard by the door wouldn't meet his eyes now, choosing instead to fidget with the radio clipped to his belt. Malcolm swallowed against the thick knot in his throat. He wanted to scream. He wanted to demand attention, to throw the papers in Trent's face, to force everyone in the bank to see what was happening. But he knew how that would go. He could see it playing out even before it happened. The headlines, the security cameras, the calls to the police, the assumptions confirmed. He'd be the problem, the angry black man, the threat. He breathed hard, forcing his jaw to unclench, and made himself go back in. The lobby fell silent when the door clicked shut behind him. He felt all eyes on him the moment he crossed the threshold again. The guard near the entrance stiffened, but didn't move yet. Trent was at the counter, finishing up with the woman he'd so politely helped moments before, smiling wide as he handed her a receipt back. When he noticed Malcolm, that smile sharpened into something predatory. Trent didn't wait for Malcolm to speak. He lifted one eyebrow with deliberate slowness. "Didn't get the hint, huh?" The words dripped venom behind their professional veneer. Malcolm ignored the insult with visible effort, swallowing hard. His voice cracked slightly as he tried to keep it steady. "I want to speak to a supervisor. Now." The air in the lobby felt charged, everyone waiting for what would happen next. Trent drew in a long breath through his nose, his smile vanishing into an impassive mask. "I'm the branch manager. That means I'm the supervisor," he said coldly. "But you're welcome to file a complaint if you want." Malcolm shook his head, voice low but clear. "Not with you. Someone above you. I want their contact. Right now." Trent's face hardened, but his eyes glinted with something malicious. He raised one hand, waggling his fingers at the security guard like he was summoning a dog. "Marcus?" I think we might have a problem customer here. He's refusing to leave. Can you help him understand bank policy?" The guard hesitated, clearly uncomfortable, but began walking toward them anyway. Malcolm took a step back, his face twisting in horror. "Wait, no. I'm not causing a problem. I'm not raising my voice. I'm just asking to see a supervisor." Trent's tone turned icy, every word measured and loud enough for everyone to hear. "This man is being disruptive," he announced, voice rising. "If he can't calm down, I'm going to have to ask you to remove him." Murmurs rippled through the lobby. Malcolm felt his knees weaken at the wave of shame. He saw customers shaking their heads, muttering, turning away to pretend they weren't watching. The guard approached slowly, palms open in a pacifying gesture. "Sir," he said softly, "let's not make this worse. Maybe you can step outside for a minute." Malcolm shook his head violently, eyes shining but dry. "No, I'm not yelling. I'm not threatening anyone. I'm just trying to get service." Trent watched with a look of exaggerated patience, then let out a small, mocking sigh. "Listen," he drawled, voice so calm it felt like a slap. "You need to be careful how you talk to me. We record threats here. Don't make me call the cops." Malcolm's mouth fell open. He felt like he'd been punched. "What threats?" he rasped, voice cracking under the strain. "I haven't threatened anyone. I'm just trying to do business." Trent held up his hands like he was the reasonable one, like he was the victim here. "Hey, man, no need to get aggressive," he said, projecting for the entire room. "I'm just trying to keep everyone safe. You're making people uncomfortable." Malcolm glanced around the lobby in panic. No one met his eyes. Heads dipped. People checked phones, shuffled feet, pretended to look at pamphlets. Not one person spoke up. Not one person said they'd heard no threat. He felt his chest tighten, the humiliation and injustice crashing over him in suffocating waves. Vendors needed to be paid. He couldn't let this stand. He didn't have the luxury of quitting. He closed his eyes for a moment and drew in one more deep breath before pushing the door open again and stepping inside. The lobby fell silent, conversation freezing at the sound of the door's soft chime. All eyes turned to him as he walked back in, his shoes clicking across the marble floor, each step slow and deliberate. The security guard took an uncertain step toward him, glancing at Trent for guidance. Trent was leaning against the counter chatting with a customer, his posture relaxed and comfortable. But the second he saw Malcolm, he straightened, and his face hardened. He held up a finger to the customer in front of him, signaling them to wait. "Well, look who's back," Trent said, loud enough for everyone to hear, a cruel smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Malcolm didn't rise to the bait. His voice trembled but held firm. "I'd like to withdraw my funds." Trent blinked slowly, tilting his head in exaggerated surprise. "Withdraw your funds." He repeated it like it was a joke. "Really?" Malcolm's hands shook slightly as he opened the briefcase and pulled out his papers, spreading them on the counter carefully, determined not to let them flutter or fall. "Yes," he said, breathless with anger and fear he fought to control. "I want to withdraw my company's funds. Today." Trent's smile sharpened into something meaner. He turned and tapped at his keyboard a few times with dramatic flair, sighing heavily as if it were a monumental inconvenience. Then he looked up, shrugged, and announced to the entire lobby, "Systems down. Oh well, nothing I can do. Try next week." A ripple of quiet laughter spread behind Malcolm. He felt the blood drain from his face, his ears ringing with rage and shame. He swallowed hard. "Please," he forced out, voice cracking. "I need access to those accounts. People are counting on this. I can't wait until next week." Trent's eyes narrowed slightly, his voice dropping into a mocking coo. "Oh, I'm so sorry. Is that a problem for you? You know, payroll and all? Such a shame." Malcolm felt his teeth grind together so hard it hurt. He forced himself to speak slowly, carefully. "Check again. There's no system issue. I saw you process that other customer's transaction not 5 minutes ago." Trent rolled his eyes theatrically, leaned over the counter conspiratorially, and said in a stage whisper designed to carry, "Sir, let's be honest here. Do you even have anything to withdraw?" Gasps and snickers bubbled up in the lobby behind him. Malcolm's vision went blurry with humiliation. He opened his mouth to protest, but no words came out. He felt completely exposed, like he was on trial, without even knowing the charges. Trent straightened, satisfied, and addressed the room at large. "Listen, folks, I'd love to help him, but I can't work miracles. I can't make money appear where there isn't any." The audience tittered, some averting their eyes, others enjoying the show. Malcolm felt like he couldn't breathe. He looked at the teller to Trent's right, a young woman with wide, horrified eyes. But she didn't speak up. No one did. The guard shifted uncomfortably, eyes flicking between them, but staying firmly planted near the door. Malcolm's fingers curled into fists so tight his nails bit into his palms. He clenched his jaw so tightly he felt it pop in his ears, trying desperately to master himself, to hold onto the last shred of dignity he could find. He laid the papers back on the counter with deliberate care, eyes locked on Trent's smirking face. His voice was hoarse but clear. "I need you to be very careful right now," he said, each word clipped, trembling with suppressed fury. "You're making a mistake. I am a client. I have accounts here, large accounts. You're not just risking insulting me, you're risking the bank itself." Trent didn't flinch. In fact, he let out a sharp bark of laughter that startled a few people in the line. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the gleaming marble, clearly enjoying the moment. "Oh wow," he drawled, voice dripping sarcasm. "Careful, everyone. We've got ourselves a big shot here. You gonna call your lawyer next? Maybe have them send us a strongly worded letter." The mockery was designed to slice, and it did. Malcolm felt the heat surge up his neck, face flushing a deep, shamed red. He opened his mouth, but Trent cut him off with a slicing motion of his hand. "Let's get one thing straight," Trent continued, voice loud enough to carry across the lobby. "I have real clients, not street hustlers in suits trying to act like they belong here. Real clients who don't need to wave paper around to prove they have money." The hush that fell was absolute. Every head turned, every conversation halted. A mother in line pulled her small child closer, whispering in his ear as if to hush questions. Malcolm felt like the floor had opened beneath him. He sucked in a sharp, ragged breath, every muscle in his body quivering with the effort of not reacting. He could taste blood where he'd bitten the inside of his cheek to keep from screaming. He tried again, voice cracking with desperation. "I'm warning you. I'm giving you a chance. Think about what you're saying. Think about what you're doing." Trent's smile twisted, turning shark-like. He leaned even closer, eyes glittering with malice. "What I'm doing," he said slowly, enunciating each syllable with cruel relish, "is protecting this bank from scams, from fraud, from people like you trying to con your way into services you haven't earned." Malcolm's mouth fell open. The words hit him like physical slaps. He felt himself shake, felt the sting of tears he refused to let fall. His fingers went numb around the folder. He swallowed, the sound too loud in the silence. His next words were little more than a hoarse whisper. "You don't know who I am. You don't know what you're risking." Trent's eyebrows shot up, mocking surprise on his face. "Oh, big mystery man. That's supposed to scare me." He let out a low chuckle, shaking his head as though Malcolm was a child throwing a tantrum. "Tell you what, you keep this up, I'm not just refusing this little request of yours today. I'm putting your name on our internal fraud watch. I'll blacklist you from every sterling federal branch in the state." The words were delivered with icy precision, calculated to humiliate, to terrify. Malcolm felt them pierce straight through his chest. He looked wildly at the teller beside Trent, who avoided his eyes, pretending to count cash that didn't need counting. He looked at the security guard, who stood watching but didn't move, face unreadable. He felt the eyes of the entire lobby on him, waiting to see if he'd explode, if he'd give them the drama they seemed to expect. But he couldn't. He couldn't. If he did, it would only prove everything Trent was saying. He felt sick to his stomach, bile rising in the back of his throat. He forced himself to swallow it. His voice failed him. He simply stood there, shaking with rage and grief he had no place to put. Trent leaned back at last, sighing dramatically, the performance over now that the damage was done. "Look," he said, voice shifting into that polished, false professionalism, the kind that would look so good on a complaint form. "We have discretion here. We decide who we do business with. And I'm deciding we're done here. Consider yourself blacklisted. Don't come back. Don't waste our time." The words landed with the finality of a slammed door. Malcolm felt something crumble inside him. He gathered his folder, fingers fumbling. He didn't bother looking at Trent again. He couldn't. The weight of the stairs behind him burned into his back as he turned away for the last time, pushing through the doors with a shuddering breath that fogged in the cold air outside. He had people counting on him. He had a company to run. He had a family name that mattered. His father hadn't sacrificed everything to build Pierce Consolidated Holdings so he could walk away defeated because some petty branch manager decided to humiliate him. His employees' livelihoods depended on this money. His investors expected accountability. He forced himself to breathe deeply, straightened his spine, and squared his shoulders. Then he turned on his heel and walked back toward the entrance, pushing the door open with slow, deliberate force. The lobby fell into a hush the second he stepped inside again. The muted conversations died instantly. Heads turned, eyes widened, and Malcolm could feel every gaze latch onto him like a spotlight. The security guard stiffened, taking a step forward, uncertainty etched on his face, hand hovering near his radio. Trent was at the counter, leaning over with that same bored arrogance, voice oily and falsely polite as he chatted with a customer. When he noticed Malcolm, he paused mid-sentence, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth like he'd been expecting the encore. He straightened with predatory calm. "I told you not to come back," Trent drawled, voice loud enough to ensure the entire lobby could hear. The condescension in his tone was thick, calculated, meant to draw the crowd in and make Malcolm's humiliation communal. Malcolm didn't flinch. He didn't speak. He simply set his briefcase down on the polished marble counter with a deliberate, echoing thud. The sound seemed to vibrate in the cold, silent air. He opened the case carefully, methodically, as though he were preparing for surgery, the brass clasps clicking loudly. Inside was a slim leather folder, worn at the edges but carefully maintained. He opened it and withdrew a single thick document, his hand steady now despite the pulsing rage in his veins. Trent's smirk faltered slightly. "What's this, another DIY business plan?" he asked, dripping sarcasm, trying to provoke another laugh from the watching crowd. But no one laughed. The atmosphere had shifted, the silence stretching tight as a wire as they waited to see what would happen next. Malcolm met Trent's gaze unblinking, his voice a low, controlled growl that carried with perfect clarity. "This is my corporate authority letter," he said. He laid it flat on the counter, smoothing it with one steady hand. "I am Malcolm Pierce, CEO of Pierce Consolidated Holdings." Trent blinked, confusion cracking through the contempt on his face. Malcolm didn't let him speak. He tapped the letter sharply. "We have $3.1 billion in deposit accounts with Sterling Federal." There was a collective intake of breath in the lobby. Heads swiveled. Someone in line whispered, "3.1 billion?" Malcolm didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Every word landed like a hammer. "These accounts are fully authorized under my signature. I have the power to transfer or close them at will." Trent's mouth opened and closed. His face had lost some of its color. His eyes darted to the letter, then back to Malcolm's cold, steady gaze. Malcolm didn't break eye contact. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his phone. He unlocked it with a flick of his thumb and held it out so Trent could see the screen. "Transfer authorization code," he said quietly but firmly, his thumb hovering over the confirm button. The seal was real. The signatures matched every file the bank had on record, and the number, $3.1 billion in deposits, was undeniable. Malcolm watched the dawning horror creep into Trent's expression with grim satisfaction. Gone was the smirk, the lazy arrogance, the icy authority. In its place was a sickly pallor that spread up Trent's neck to the tips of his ears. His mouth worked soundlessly for a moment, like a fish gasping on a dock. Malcolm didn't let him speak. He flicked his thumb with sharp finality, and the phone began to ring. He lifted it to his ear with steady hands as the entire lobby watched, silent and unblinking. Even the security guard stayed frozen, his face a mask of shock and discomfort. The line clicked. A clear, professional voice answered immediately. "Mr. Pierce." It was Angela Mayfield, his CFO, her voice calm and sharp even through the speaker. "What's your instruction?" Malcolm didn't take his eyes off Trent. His voice was quiet, cold, and precise. "Angela, initiate the transfer." There was a beat of silence on the line as the words registered. Then Angela spoke, crisp and controlled. "Full withdrawal." Malcolm's expression didn't change. His jaw was set, his eyes locked onto Trent's paling face with unblinking fury. "All of it," he said. "Every cent. I want the funds moved before they close today." The lobby was so quiet, the words echoed. A woman in line actually gasped out loud and covered her mouth. The tapping of keyboard keys and the gentle whir of the printer at the far teller stations seemed suddenly deafening. Trent's mouth dropped open, a small, strangled sound escaping before he managed to force words out. Wait, Mr. Pierce, Malcolm, let's not be hasty." Malcolm didn't move. He didn't even blink. He just held the phone steady and spoke with the same icy calm. "Angela, notify Sterling Federal Corporate. This branch will not hold a single cent of our money by close of business." On the line, Angela didn't miss a beat. "Understood. I'll alert them now and coordinate with legal. Transfer will begin immediately." She hung up without waiting for anything else. Malcolm lowered the phone slowly, deliberately, and slipped it back into his pocket. He closed the briefcase with a soft, final click. Trent let out a sharp, desperate laugh, too loud, too manic. He spread his hands in front of him, palms up, voice cracking. "Malcolm, Mr. Pierce, come on. Don't do this. Let's talk about this. We can work something out." But the words sounded hollow even as he said them. Everyone in the lobby could hear the raw panic edging into his voice. The customers, who had been watching with curiosity, now wore wide-eyed expressions of awe and embarrassment. A mother held her child closer. An older man shook his head slowly, muttering under his breath. Malcolm's eyes were hard as flint. He tilted his head ever so slightly, watching Trent squirm. "Work something out," he repeated, voice low but carrying. "After you called me a fraud? After you threatened to blacklist me from every branch in the state?" Trent swallowed hard, his atoms apple-bobbing in his throat. He tried to find the smirk again, but it didn't come. His face was a mask of fear now. He darted a glance at the security guard, who simply stood there, mouth tight, looking anywhere but at them. Trent's voice cracked when he tried again. "We don't have to do this. It's just business, right? Let's talk." Malcolm's eyes flashed with something like pity, but it was cold and hard-edged. He shook his head once. "No, Trent. This isn't business. This is personal." He let the words hang in the air, heavy and final. Then he leaned in, his voice dropping so low only Trent could hear it. "You made it personal." Trent's breath stuttered. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. No easy arrogance in his posture. His mouth felt dry as sandpaper, his pulse roaring in his ears, so loud he could barely hear the uncomfortable shuffling of the line that still stretched halfway through the lobby, full of customers who no longer even pretended not to watch him. A woman at the front of the line coughed, breaking the silence, her gaze fixed on the floor as though afraid to look at him directly. Behind her, a man shifted uncomfortably, murmuring something to his wife in a tone that sounded equal parts disgust and awe. Trent licked his lips, realizing he was breathing too fast. He forced himself to straighten, shoving a clammy hand through his hair, willing his mind to clear. He opened his mouth to say something, anything, to reclaim the room, but no words came. The security guard shifted on his feet, clearing his throat softly, but didn't move to help. The young teller beside Trent glanced at him once, then quickly looked away, pretending to check a register she wasn't even using. He could feel the sweat prickling at his hairline, trickling down the back of his neck, soaking the collar of his shirt. Then his phone vibrated in his pocket. The sound was so loud in the quiet that he flinched. He yanked it out, thumb fumbling over the screen to see the caller ID. It was the regional director. His heart dropped into his shoes. He hesitated only for a breath before answering, voice cracking as he tried to sound calm. "Hello." On the other end, there was no greeting, no preamble, just a voice like ice. "What the hell did you do?" Trent's mouth worked silently. He felt heat rush to his face. He forced himself to swallow. I can explain." The voice cut him off, every word a blade. "Explain to me why I have corporate compliance screaming in my ear about a $3 billion withdrawal authorization. Explain to me why legal is on the line asking if we just violated half our client covenants. Explain to me why the board wants an emergency meeting in the next hour." Trent opened his mouth, but no sound came. The silence on the other end stretched and thickened, suffocating. Finally, the voice spoke again, lower, more dangerous. "Stay put. Don't talk to anyone. We're sending someone over." The call ended with a cold click. Trent lowered the phone slowly, fingers trembling, feeling the plastic slip slickly against his sweat-slick palms. He stood there for a moment, the lobby's eyes still boring into his back, his mind churning so hard he felt physically ill. Then the door opened with a soft chime. It wasn't Malcolm this time. It was two men in corporate security uniforms, dark suits, steel badges on their belts, earpieces crackling softly. They walked with quiet, unhurried authority, scanning the lobby once before zeroing in on him. One of them spoke, voice calm, but brooking no argument. "Mr. Collier, you need to come with us." Trent swallowed hard, tried to find his voice. "Wait, I can explain. It was a misunderstanding." The taller of the two shook his head once, the motion small and final. "Let's go. Now." Trent felt something inside him crumple. He tried to look at the teller beside him, but she wouldn't meet his eyes. The guard at the door turned away, pretending to adjust the radio on his shoulder. The customers in line parted without a word, making space for the humiliating procession. Trent's legs felt wooden as he stepped around the counter. He could feel the heat of 100 eyes on him, could hear someone whisper, "Is that the manager?" and another voice answering, "He's done." The security officers flanked him, one at each side, their hands hovering but not quite touching him, guiding him firmly toward the back hallway. As they passed through the lobby, he tried once more to salvage something. "I didn't know who he was," he mumbled, voice cracking. "He didn't look like someone important." No one answered. No one cared. The walk felt endless. At the door to the staff-only area, the taller officer leaned in close enough for Trent to smell his aftershave. His voice was low enough that only Trent could hear. "You're going to clean out your desk. Then you're going to leave. Quietly. Don't make this worse." Trent felt something give way in his chest. His shoulders sagged, all the defiance draining out of him in a single exhale. He nodded once, jerky and broken. The doors swung shut behind them, cutting him off from the lobby, from the bank he'd lorded over for years, from the power he'd abused so easily and so often. Back in the lobby, the customers slowly returned to their transactions, their voices hushed, their eyes wary. The tellers exchanged glances but said nothing, the quiet settling in like dust after an explosion. Months had passed since the day Sterling Federal Bank's glass doors closed behind Malcolm Pierce, with an echo like a gavel falling. The scandal that erupted afterward became a cautionary tale spreading far beyond a single branch. News outlets ran headline after headline dissecting the humiliating footage leaked from a customer's phone, showing the bank manager's sneering dismissal, the threats to call police, the security guard escorting out a man whose company held over $3 billion on deposit. Corporate fired Trent Collier within 48 hours, their press release clinical in its phrasing, a failure of values and service that does not reflect our commitment to equity. They refunded fees to customers, held emergency anti-bias trainings, and rushed out advertising with new slogans about trust. None of it stopped the bleeding. Competitors wooed away major clients. The stock price sagged under the weight of public disgust and shareholder fury. Malcolm Pierce didn't give a single interview. He didn't tweet. He didn't post online. He simply moved every last cent out of Sterling Federal and never set foot in one of their branches again. He didn't want revenge. He wanted accountability. But that didn't mean he forgot. Meanwhile, Trent Collier's life imploded with the same quiet efficiency with which he'd once humiliated customers. He tried to get jobs at other banks, but found his name radioactive. HR departments politely declined. Recruiters ghosted him. Even smaller credit unions wanted nothing to do with the viral footage of him smirking as he threatened to blacklist a black entrepreneur. He lost the car when payments lapsed. The condo went next. He moved into a sparse rental on the other side of town, licking his wounds and drinking too much at night. At first, he was angry. He blamed Malcolm. He blamed cancel culture. He blamed the kid who'd recorded the video instead of minding their business. But anger gave way to shame during the sleepless nights. He replayed his words over and over. Come back with someone who knows banking. Street hustlers in suits. Some people don't know their place. He couldn't hear them without flinching. It was during one of those endless nights that he saw the flyer at the laundromat tacked crooked on the corkboard. Volunteers needed. Teach financial literacy. Help change lives. He pulled it down without really knowing why. The first day, he showed up at the city-run youth center. He wore his old bank tie, stiff with ironing. But when he saw the kids, teenagers slouched in metal chairs, eyes skeptical and exhausted, he took it off and stuffed it in his pocket. He started slow, balancing a checkbook, avoiding payday loan traps, saving $1 even when it hurt. At first they tuned him out, saw only another authority figure trying to lecture them. But he learned to shut up and listen. He heard about their parents' overdraft fees that seemed to multiply like roaches, about pawn phones, evictions, repo trucks in the night. They didn't need moral lessons, they needed tools. So he stopped telling them what they should do and started showing them how they could. Over months, the classes grew. The kids ribbed him, made fun of his thinning hair and scuffed shoes, but they kept coming back. They brought friends. Trent arrived early to make coffee. He stayed late to help a kid fill out a FAFSA. He walked home most nights exhausted, but clearer than he had ever felt behind that polished marble counter. One chilly evening, the center hummed with low conversation as teenagers worked through mock loan applications at plastic tables. Trent crouched next to a girl tracing numbers on a worksheet. He murmured encouragement, correcting a small math error. When he straightened, his back protested, and he rubbed it absently, smiling despite the ache. Then he saw the man standing in the doorway. Malcolm Pierce hadn't changed much. He wore a simple dark coat, hands in the pockets, eyes watchful and unreadable. Trent felt his stomach drop, his throat tightening. For a moment he almost turned away in shame, but he forced himself to hold that gaze. He felt the silence in the room settle around them like dust. The kids sensed something and fell quiet, glancing curiously between the two men. Trent cleared his throat. His voice was rusty, softer than it had ever been behind the bank counter. "Mr. Pierce," he managed, the words catching. I'm sorry. It wasn't much. It felt absurdly small compared to the damage he'd done. But he couldn't offer anything else. He couldn't fix the past. He could only speak the truth. Malcolm didn't move for a long moment. His dark eyes scanned the room, taking in the chip paint, the handwritten posters about budgeting, the battered desks, the kids watching with wary hope. He finally nodded once, slow and measured. He stepped forward just enough to be heard, but not enough to dominate the space. His voice was quiet, but it carried. "Good," Malcolm said. "Now keep helping them." Trent's breath hitched. He felt something in his chest loosen, something he hadn't even known was knotted tight. He nodded once, more to himself than to Malcolm. He turned back to the kids, clapping his hands to get them refocused, guiding them through the next line item. Voice clear and steady despite the tears burning unshed in his eyes. Malcolm watched for another minute, then turned and left without another word, stepping back into the cold night, leaving Trent with the choice he'd made and the work still to do. The end. If you enjoyed the story and want to see more like it, make sure to hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. I'd love to know what you think about the plot. Did the ending work for you? Did you expect Trent's transformation? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Also, share where you're watching from. I'm always excited to see how many places these stories reach.